You already know the internet clocked this the second the live stream went sideways. And now Juelz Smith is standing at the center of the loudest firestorm the Knowles bloodline has been dragged into in years. One evening, he was trending as the mysterious young model with the world's most famous aunt, and by the next sunrise, Juelz Smith was the subject of accusations so heavy that even people who have never watched a single Beyonce concert were forwarding the clip to their group chats. This is not a small mess. This is the kind of mess that punches through firewalls, jumps timelines, and ends up on the desks of publicists who normally never touch anything under the Knowles-Carter umbrella. Juelz Smith is not just a young man dealing with a scandal. Juelz Smith is a walking access point into the most meticulously guarded public armor in modern celebrity. And the moment his name lit up with the words assault and firearm in the same sentence, every reporter in every corner of the entertainment internet stopped what they were doing and looked up. But the part almost nobody is talking about yet, the part that turns this from a viral clip into something that could reshape the entire family conversation, is what has allegedly been unfolding behind the scenes in the days since Juelz went live and dropped the accusations that lit the match. According to a rising tide of online chatter, the Knowles-Carter household is not calm right now. It is not quiet. It is not composed. Sources with proximity to the family are whispering that Beyonce is done. Not upset. Not disappointed. Done. And if even half of what is being said is real, then Juelz Smith may have just triggered the single, most explosive private fracture the Knowles family has experienced in a generation. Unconfirmed reports, keep that word in your mind, unconfirmed, are also claiming that an arrest may have quietly taken place, that legal representatives were reportedly summoned before the mainstream cameras ever noticed, and that Solange Knowles is caught between shielding her only son and holding a truce with a sister whose empire will not tolerate another blemish. None of that has been confirmed by anybody with an official title, but the noise online has officially crossed into deafening, and once you hear what Juelz actually said on that live stream, you will understand why. Now, let us slow the tape all the way down. Because if we are going to talk about what allegedly happened, we owe it to everyone involved to walk it out step by step. Juelz is a Twitch streamer with a growing audience, and a few nights ago, she went live with an expression that did not match her usual energy. There was something in her posture, something in her voice. Juelz was not there to entertain. Juelz was there to speak, and what she said set the internet on fire within minutes. She claimed that she and Juelz Smith had scheduled a casual meetup at a hotel. Nothing dramatic. Nothing worth headlines. Just two young people crossing paths in the messy modern way people connect now. And according to her account, everything was normal until it wasn't. Juelz alleged that Juelz Smith's mood flipped without warning. One moment they were in a conversation, and the next, she says his energy shifted so sharply she could not identify a cause. She said the switch felt sudden, unexplained, and impossible to trace to any single trigger. And then, according to her, the situation turned physical. Juelz claimed Juelz Smith allegedly pushed her to the floor. She claimed he struck her multiple times across her body. She claimed the alleged encounter left bruises she photographed and scratches that lingered for days. Now, let me pause here and remind you of the guardrails. These remain allegations. Nothing on the record has been proven. But the way Juelz delivered these details on camera, with the composure of someone reciting a report rather than someone performing for a live stream, is what made viewers slow down and start listening. The moment the clip started circulating with the words assault and Beyonce's Nephew stapled together, every gossip channel in the country hit record. And then came the screenshot. This detail alone, this one visual, is what pushed the story out of niche gossip circles and into the mainstream conversation. Juelz revealed that in her phone, Juelz Smith had not been saved as Juelz Smith. He had been saved, quite simply, as Beyonce Nephew. That is the contact name. Not his first name. Not his last name. Not even a nickname. Just the two words that anchor his entire public identity in a single tap. And the internet lost its mind. Because for a family that has spent over 2 decades building a fortress around every syllable that leaves their compound, the idea that Juelz Smith walks through the world tagged in strangers' phones as Beyonce Nephew is exactly the kind of detail that the family probably wishes never existed on any device anywhere in the world. Juelz did not stop there. She said she still holds the photographs of her alleged injuries. She said she still has the messages. She said she has been trying to keep the situation private, but that the silence from the other side forced her to speak. And then she did something that a lot of accusers do not do. Juelz publicly dared Juelz Smith to sue her. If I'm lying, take me to court. If I'm lying, prove it. She said the words like a woman who had already made peace with the risk of saying them. And that, more than anything else, is what has made this story so difficult for the Knowles-Carter machinery to bury. Then, on a follow-up livestream, Juelz added a claim that changed the emotional weight of the entire story. She said that during the alleged altercation, Juelz Smith reached into his bag and pulled out a firearm. She said he pointed it toward her face. She said he tapped her on the head with it. Let that land for a second. A young woman is alleging, on a live broadcast, that Beyoncé's nephew brandished a weapon at her in a hotel room. Not implied, not hinted at, explicitly stated. She also claimed that during the confrontation, her phone was damaged, that the repair cost approximately $120, and that Juelz Smith allegedly refused to cover the repair. In her own words, she said she tried to make amends. She said she tried to keep things private. She said she reached out. But when the situation escalated the way she says it did, she felt her only remaining option was to speak publicly, on her own platform, in her own voice. Now, again, these are allegations. Nothing has been proven in any court of law. No official record has confirmed the presence of a firearm at the scene. But once a firearm claim is attached to a story, the story stops being celebrity gossip and starts becoming something else entirely. And that is exactly the shift the Knowles-Carter empire has spent decades trying to prevent. Because Beyonce and Jay-Z are not just musicians. They are institutions. They are a brand engine that generates hundreds of millions of dollars in adjacent revenue every year, and every piece of that revenue is tethered to the assumption that the family behind the throne is composed, private, and above the fray. The moment a name from inside that family is publicly attached to an alleged firearm incident, that assumption starts to wobble, and when the assumption wobbles, the empire's protective instincts kick in. Which brings us to the most explosive layer of this entire situation. The layer that a lot of the mainstream outlets have been too cautious to touch. According to online chatter, and again keep that word chatter in your mind because none of this is verified, Beyonce is reportedly furious. Not furious at Juelz, not furious at the internet, furious at her own family, furious at Solange for allegedly not intervening earlier, furious at the pattern of controversies that keeps orbiting Juelz Smith and dragging the Knowles-Carter name into headlines it should never have to occupy. Sources online are whispering that Beyonce has quietly made it clear behind closed doors that she is tired of being pulled into scandals attached to a young man she did not raise, did not choose to publicize, and did not sign up to defend. And here is where the story fractures in a way that could genuinely reshape the family dynamic. Because if the online rumors are accurate, and remember they remain rumors until proven otherwise, Solange is not taking any of this quietly. Solange Knowles has always been the more private sister. Solange has never chased headlines. Solange has been protective of Juelz Smith since the moment he was born into a spotlight he never asked for. And sources are alleging that Solange feels her older sister is looking at this situation through a corporate lens rather than a maternal one. The rumor floating around is that Solange feels Beyonce is treating Juelz Smith like a liability instead of a nephew. And if that framing is even partially real, it is the kind of internal fracture that does not heal in a news cycle. It heals over years, or it never heals at all. You have to understand the weight of what is being suggested here. Beyonce and Solange have spent their entire lives building a public relationship that many people consider the gold standard for celebrity sisterhood. They performed together. They toured together. They defended each other. They kept their disagreements out of the spotlight even when the tabloid world was begging for a rift. And now, according to whispers online, that decades-long alignment is being tested by a 21-year-old man's alleged behavior on a Twitch livestream. If those whispers are real, then Juelz Smith is not just facing a scandal. Juelz Smith is unintentionally at the center of a family repositioning that could ripple across the Knowles-Carter empire for years to come. And this is the moment the floor drops out. Because there is more. Juelz is not the first name to publicly attach itself to Juelz Smith in a way that raised eyebrows. Sky Jackson was one of the earlier names. If you were online during that era, you remember exactly what unfolded. Alleged private messages leaked. Alleged intimate content circulated. Juelz Smith was reportedly implicated in the spread of that content, and the resulting internet firestorm did permanent damage to how a lot of people perceived him. Then there was the young woman known online as Adore, who publicly claimed she was pregnant following an alleged encounter with Juelz Smith. She alleged that Juelz Smith was afraid of how his family would react. She alleged that during a visit to his home, he covered his face because he did not want to be seen. She shared screenshots that she said documented private conversations between them. And once again, the internet stitched a story together in real time. None of these prior situations resulted in a legal outcome. Juelz Smith has not been formally charged in relation to those older claims. But when you stack the timeline of allegations, one after another, from the Sky Jackson leak to the Adore pregnancy claim to the Juelz hotel accusations, a pattern begins to emerge in the public imagination that is very difficult to erase. And that pattern is now being weaponized in every comment section, every reaction video, and every gossip livestream across the platform. People are pulling old screenshots. People are digging up old clips. People are stitching together a narrative that paints Juelz Smith as a young man who has been given the softest possible landing every single time his name has appeared in a scandal, precisely because of who his aunt is. Add to all of that the more recent situation with Tommy Lee. If you were tapped into the celebrity feed a few weeks ago, you saw the piggyback video. Tommy Lee, a 41-year-old reality personality with a lengthy public history of controversies and reported charges, was captured on video calling Juelz Smith her baby while riding on his back. Juelz Smith later described the encounter in casual, lighthearted terms. He called it a crazy weekend. He joked about spending time with someone he liked. And the internet immediately jumped on the noticeable age gap. But the age gap was not the entire story. Tommy Lee's own history became part of the discussion. She has publicly discussed multiple past arrests. Reports have cited a string of alleged charges that included battery, shoplifting, theft of services, and an incident involving a bus. She reportedly appeared in a Georgia courtroom on more than a dozen charges over the years, and her time on Love and Hip Hop Atlanta included a widely reported feud with Jocelyn Hernandez that itself spawned allegations of a vehicular altercation. So when Juelz Smith's name got publicly linked to Tommy Lee's, even in a lighthearted piggyback clip, it triggered a broader conversation about the kind of company Juelz Smith seems to be gravitating toward. That is what makes the current Rhea Juelz situation land so hard. It is not landing in a vacuum. It is landing on top of a foundation of prior chatter, prior allegations, and prior visual optics that have already conditioned the internet to view Juelz Smith with skepticism. And when a young woman goes live with detailed accusations of physical assault and an alleged firearm, that skepticism converts almost immediately into presumption. Fair or not, right or wrong, that is how the internet processes stories at this scale. Now, let us return to the meticulously guarded public armor that Beyonce and Jay-Z have built, because this is where the calculation gets ruthless. Beyonce is not just protecting her career. Beyonce is protecting Cowboy Carter-era momentum, brand partnerships, film development, world tour infrastructure, and every business unit that flows through the Parkwood ecosystem. Jay-Z is protecting Roc Nation sports, entertainment partnerships, and legacy litigation exposure. When a name inside the family becomes tethered to a public firearm allegation, the risk calculus for those partnerships changes overnight. Sponsors get nervous. Board members ask questions. Long-term contracts get reviewed. This is not paranoia. This is how modern celebrity brand management works, and the Knowles-Carter operation is one of the most sophisticated of its kind in the world. That is why the online whispers about Beyonce's alleged private reaction are so difficult to dismiss out of hand. It would actually be strange if Beyonce wasn't concerned. It would be strange if the family wasn't holding meetings. It would be strange if lawyers weren't consulted. That is exactly what a family of this scale would do in a moment like this. Whether it happened the way the rumors describe is another question, but the underlying logic of the whispers is not implausible. And this is exactly why the internet has latched onto the alleged fracture between Beyonce and Solange with such intensity. It feels emotionally true even before it can be factually verified. The chatter online is now claiming that there have been reportedly private conversations about restructuring how the family engages with Juelz Smith publicly. Some are suggesting the possibility of quiet distance. Some are suggesting a rumored withdrawal of certain financial and reputational supports. Others are suggesting that Solange has drawn a line, telling her sister that no matter what happens publicly, Juelz Smith is her son and she will not disown him under pressure. None of this has been confirmed by Beyonce, Solange, Tina Knowles, or anyone with the authority to speak on the record. But every one of those alleged conversations, if they even resemble the whispers online, tells you how seriously the family is reportedly taking this moment. And this is the paradox of the whole situation. Beyonce's name did not need to be attached to any of this. Beyonce did not do anything. Beyonce was not in the hotel room. Beyonce did not send any messages. Beyonce did not touch anyone. But because Juelz Smith is Solange's son, and Solange is Beyonce's sister, and Rhea Juelz saved the contact name in her phone as Beyonce Nephew, the algorithm and the internet and the tabloid ecosystem have all silently agreed that this is a Beyonce story now. Whether that is fair to Beyonce is a question worth asking. Whether it is a burden Solange should carry alone is another question worth asking. And whether Juelz Smith, at only 21 years old, deserves the double weight of a legal scandal and a familial repositioning is the deepest question of all. Let us zoom out for a moment. Because the truth is, This story is not just about one young man and one Twitch streamer and one alleged hotel altercation. This story is about the modern collision between celebrity dynasty, social media accountability, and the shrinking distance between famous families and the public that watches them. There was a time when a story like this would have been silenced in a single phone call. There was a time when publicists could quietly stitch up the wound before it bled onto the front pages. There was a time when the Knowles-Carter machinery could redirect the narrative before dinner. That time is over. Now, the story breaks on a live stream, is dissected by strangers in real time, is packaged into short-form clips within minutes, and is being consumed by millions of viewers who have already reached a verdict before any court has heard a syllable. That is the new terrain, and even a family as powerful as the Knowles-Carters cannot fully outrun it. Which is why the rumored alleged tension between Beyonce and Solange feels so freighted, even without confirmation. Because for Beyonce, the priority may be protecting the empire. And for Solange, the priority is protecting her son. Both of those priorities are legitimate. Both of those priorities are understandable. But when they collide inside a family that has spent a lifetime showcasing unity, the internal impact can be significant even when the external presentation remains composed. That is what people online are picking up on. That is what has fueled the volume of speculation. Not because anyone has proof of a fight, but because the situation itself creates the conditions where two very different priorities could reasonably collide. Now let us talk about the alleged arrest, because it is one of the most persistent whispers online and one of the least confirmed pieces of the story. Multiple accounts across social media are alleging that Juelz Smith may have been briefly taken into custody in connection with the Juelz allegations. Some are alleging that the alleged detainment was handled discreetly, that no cameras captured the moment, and that a legal team retained through Knowles-Carter connections may have moved swiftly to contain the situation before it hit any mainstream feed. Let me be extraordinarily clear again. There is no verified public record confirming this alleged arrest. There is no press release. There is no widely circulated booking documentation. Everything about this alleged detainment currently lives in the world of internet claims, and internet claims are not evidence. But the fact that the alleged detainment story has traveled so far across so many platforms is itself part of what has intensified the Beyonce conversation. Because if any part of it turns out to be real, it would explain the reported urgency inside the family. And here is where the audience becomes part of the story. Because the internet is not passively watching this unfold. The internet is participating. The internet is choosing which parts of the narrative to elevate, which characters to sympathize with, and which allegations to accept even before they are proven. That kind of collective judgment is a new form of pressure on famous families, and the Knowles-Carter dynasty is currently being subjected to a version of it that even Beyonce's most seasoned team may not have fully anticipated. Every hour that Juelz Smith does not personally respond, the vacuum fills with speculation. Every hour that Solange does not address the situation, the vacuum fills with speculation. Every hour that Beyonce remains publicly silent, the vacuum fills with theories about what her silence might mean. And silence, when you are Beyonce, is never neutral. Silence is a message. Silence is a strategic choice. Silence is a calculation. Which is why every fan who has followed her career for the last 20 years is watching this moment with something close to forensic attention. Is her silence a shield? Is her silence a rebuke? Is her silence a directive to the family to handle it privately? Is her silence a way to send a signal to Juelz Smith without ever having to say a word? Nobody outside the compound knows. But everybody outside the compound is guessing. And that guessing has now generated more media coverage than most celebrities receive in an entire year. Consider the historical pattern for a moment. Beyonce has weathered husband infidelity rumors, elevator scandals, custody speculation, pregnancy conspiracy theories, sample lawsuits, tour interruptions, and stalker incidents. Every single time, her weapon of choice has been silence, followed by a curated visual response through Vogue, an album drop, or a single choreographed live moment that reset the entire narrative. If that pattern is repeating right now, then the current stretch of silence is not indifference. It is preparation. And whatever visual, musical, or written response eventually emerges, if any emerges at all, will be studied by publicists for the next 20 years. That is the scale at which Beyonce operates. She does not react in the moment. She sets the moment for later, and the world always ends up watching on her timing. Meanwhile, Juelz continues to speak. She has continued to appear on live streams. She has continued to answer questions from her audience. She has continued to defend the timeline of her claims. She has continued to insist that if she were lying, Juelz Smith would have already pursued legal action. And she has continued to say that she is well aware of the size of the family she is going up against, that she is prepared for the pressure, and that she is not walking any of it back. Whether her narrative holds up under scrutiny remains to be seen. Whether she has the corroborating evidence to convert her allegations into a legal case remains to be seen. Whether Juelz Smith himself will ever step forward and directly address any of this remains to be seen. The story is still writing itself. There is also a credibility layer that deserves examination. Because Ria Juelz did not merely make claims and disappear. Ria Juelz produced a screenshot. Ria Juelz referenced physical photographs. Ria Juelz provided a specific dollar figure for the alleged phone damage. Ria Juelz named a location. Ria Juelz cross-referenced text messages. Whether every single one of those details survives forensic scrutiny is a separate question, but the volume of specificity is not the profile of a person fabricating an entire encounter from nothing. Specificity is the currency of credibility in modern accusation narratives, and Ria Juelz spent that currency generously. On the other side, defense analysts will note that specificity can also be manufactured, that screenshots can be edited, that photographs of injuries can be attributed to any number of causes, and that livestream performance is not a substitute for sworn testimony. Both readings coexist right now, and the audience is choosing which one to hold based largely on tribe rather than evidence. And that is exactly what makes this such a dangerous moment for the Knowles-Carter empire. Not because the allegations are proven, not because a legal case is imminent, but because the narrative is uncontrolled. The narrative is fluid. The narrative is being written by strangers on the internet who do not owe the family anything. That kind of uncontrolled narrative is the single greatest threat to a public brand at this level. And it is exactly the situation that Beyonce has spent her entire adult life engineering safeguards against. There is another layer to consider. Blue Ivy is 14. Rumi and Sir are 8. These are children who are old enough to see the headlines, hear the whispers, and understand that their older cousin is at the center of a scandal that involves language they should not have to associate with a family member. That is the private cost of a public story like this. It is not just corporate. It is not just reputational. It is emotional. It is developmental. It shapes how young family members understand what it means to grow up inside a dynasty. And any parent, even a parent as powerful as Beyonce, would reasonably want to shield their children from that kind of exposure. That, more than any brand calculation, may be the true engine behind whatever private reaction is actually unfolding inside the household right now. Tina Knowles, the matriarch, has also been notably silent. Historically, Tina Knowles has been one of the more outspoken members of the family. She has posted, commented, defended, and clarified during past controversies. Her silence in this moment is being interpreted in a dozen different ways online. Some think she is deliberately staying out of it to avoid escalating the noise. Some think she is quietly guiding Solange through the situation behind the scenes. Some think her silence itself is a signal that the situation is more serious than the family wants the public to realize. Once again, none of this is verified. But every silence is now being read like a coded message, and that is a level of scrutiny that even a family this experienced can find suffocating. Now, let us circle back to Juelz Smith himself. Because in all of this, we have been talking about the family, the empire, the allegations, and the internet. But Juelz Smith is a 21-year-old young man in the middle of it. 21. That is important to remember. 21 is not a fully formed public figure. 21 is not a seasoned executive. 21 is a young man still figuring out who he wants to be, still making mistakes, still testing boundaries, still being tested by the fame that circles his last name. Whatever the truth is about the Ria Juelz allegations, and whatever the truth is about the older situations, Juelz Smith is not a fully finished person yet. He is a young man carrying a last name that was assigned to him at birth, walking through a spotlight he never picked, being judged in real time by millions of people who have never met him. That does not excuse anything that may have occurred. That does not neutralize any of the allegations. That does not erase the seriousness of what has been claimed. But it is context. And context matters, especially when the internet is preparing to render a verdict. At the same time, that context does not neutralize the seriousness of Ria Juelz's claims either. If any part of what she said turns out to be verified, then the story shifts from celebrity gossip into a domain that deserves the attention of authorities, not just algorithms. Domestic violence allegations should never be reduced to entertainment. Firearm allegations should never be reduced to entertainment. Those are heavy claims that carry real-world consequences for both the accuser and the accused, and both sides deserve the full weight of due process, credible investigation, and honest evaluation. That is why this story is now sitting in a strange middle ground. It is too serious to be treated as gossip, but too unverified to be treated as fact. It exists in a space where the internet is drawing conclusions faster than any institution can validate them. And here is where the alleged Knowles-Carter internal drama becomes especially significant. Because if Beyonce and Solange are genuinely at odds about how to handle this, then the family is now navigating two separate crises at the same time. The external crisis is the public perception of Juelz Smith. The internal crisis is the private disagreement between two sisters who have historically been each other's fiercest allies. Managing one crisis is difficult. Managing two simultaneously, while the entire world is watching, is on a completely different level. And that is the challenge the Knowles-Carter machine is reportedly wrestling with as we speak. There is also a legal dimension that most viewers may not immediately consider. If any part of Juelz's account eventually rises to the level of formal complaint, the legal exposure would not sit only with Juelz Smith personally. Depending on jurisdiction, on the alleged specifics, and on any potential connection between the alleged firearm and the alleged assault, the reporting obligations and legal implications can compound quickly. Attorneys who handle high-profile client protection typically prioritize three objectives at moments like this. First, contain the narrative. Second, negotiate any potential resolution outside the courtroom whenever feasible and appropriate. Third, prepare a documented defensive posture in case public accusations become the foundation of a formal case. Whether any of those three objectives are being pursued right now on behalf of Juelz Smith is unknown to the public. But given the sophistication of the family's known legal relationships, most experienced observers would be surprised if no counsel had already been consulted. That is not proof of guilt. That is simply how careful families operate when a young family member is publicly named in a serious allegation. Some online voices are now suggesting that the family may soon issue a controlled statement designed to project unity, protect the empire, and gently create distance from Juelz Smith without publicly rejecting him. Other voices are suggesting that Solange may release her own personal message, framed maternally rather than corporately, to remind the audience that Juelz Smith is her son first and a headline second. And still other voices are suggesting that Beyonce may say absolutely nothing, letting her silence continue to speak for itself while her team quietly moves the pieces behind the scenes. Each of these possibilities carries its own risks and its own rewards, and only the people inside the compound know which direction is most likely. There is one more angle worth naming, because it will inevitably shape how the story is remembered. The Knowles-Carter family is not merely famous. The Knowles-Carter family is a symbol. For many viewers, especially inside the Black community that has watched Beyonce and Solange grow up in public, this family is not just entertainment. This family is a cultural inheritance. That symbolic weight raises the emotional stakes of every scandal, because every scandal risks damaging something that many viewers feel personally invested in. When Juelz Smith's name is attached to disturbing allegations, the reaction is not just gossip curiosity. It is closer to disappointment, closer to protectiveness, closer to a communal reckoning about how to hold a young man accountable without dismissing him entirely. That layered emotional response is a huge part of why this story refuses to fade. It is not a shallow scandal. It is a story that touches identity, legacy, and the meaning of celebrity itself. What is undeniable is that this moment matters. It matters for Juelz Smith personally. It matters for Juelz personally. It matters for Solange as a mother. It matters for Beyonce as a public figure and as an aunt. It matters for Tina Knowles as the matriarch. It matters for every young cousin growing up under this dynasty. And it matters for every viewer at home who is watching a family that seemed untouchable navigate a moment that suddenly feels very human. Which brings us to the question that every viewer needs to sit with before scrolling to the next video. If the rumors about Beyonce's alleged frustration are accurate, would she be justified in protecting the empire she has spent her lifetime building, even at the cost of publicly stepping back from her nephew? And if the rumors about Solange's alleged pushback are accurate, would she be justified in defending her son unconditionally, even if it means friction with the most famous sister in the world? Where does family loyalty end? Where does self-protection begin? And can a family of this scale ever truly separate the two? These are not rhetorical questions. These are the actual moral pressure points that this story has placed at the center of the culture, and every viewer will answer them differently based on their own history, their own family, and their own values. Juelz has laid her cards on the table. Juelz Smith has, so far, chosen silence. Solange has not spoken. Beyonce has not spoken. Tina Knowles has not spoken. Every empty microphone is a signal, and every signal is being read by millions of people simultaneously. That is where we are right now. Not at the beginning of the story. Not at the middle of the story. In the eye of the storm, waiting to see who breaks the silence first. and how loudly they choose to do it when they finally speak. Because the truth is, this story will not stay quiet. This story will not fade in a news cycle. This story will not disappear on its own. Whether the eventual resolution comes from a courtroom, a press release, a family statement, or a strategic silence that outlasts the internet's attention span, something will eventually shift. And when that shift happens, everyone who followed this story from the earliest live stream to the latest headline will remember exactly where they were when Juelz Smith became the accidental fault line of the most guarded dynasty in modern entertainment. Drop your verdict in the comment lane below and tell me exactly where you land. Do you believe Beyonce would be justified in creating public distance from Juelz Smith if these allegations are proven credible? Do you think Solange should defend her son publicly, regardless of how the story affects the Knowles-Carter empire? Do you believe the whispers of an alleged arrest are grounded in something real or manufactured entirely by the internet? And do you believe the alleged fracture between Beyonce and Solange is a genuine private moment being leaked in fragments, or a projection being manufactured by anonymous accounts online? These are the questions that will define how this story lands in the public memory, and your voice in the comments is part of shaping that outcome. If you made it this far, hit that like button, hit the subscribe, share this with the friend who has been watching this story unfold with you since the first Rhea Juelz clip dropped, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next chapter. Because whether it comes tomorrow, next week, or next month, the Knowles-Carter family is not done with this story yet, and neither are we. Stay tuned, stay tapped in, and I will meet you right back here the moment the next receipt drops.